Everybody, it's Drags, and it's Wednesday, November 14th. Time for episode 271 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network. Find us at clnsmedia.com, and of course, follow us on Twitter at Patriots CLNS for all of your football coverage, including, of course, the New England Patriots. Well, this is the bye week for the Patriots, and a time for self-scouting and self-assessment. After a 34-10 loss to the Titans that dropped the Patriots to 7-3 after 10 games, there's plenty of both to do. So I figured this week would be a good time as any to take a look inside the Patriots with our guy who breaks down film with the best of them, and I mean this, Evan Lazar, our Patriots beat writer. Long time no talk, Evan. How you been?
Yeah, it's been, 2 days?
Yeah, so I gotta say, at our adult beverage establishment on Sunday afternoon, where we just, I'll just go ahead and say Bar Louie. It was a good take, if you couldn't be down in Nashville at Nissan Stadium, yourself, Alex Barth and me, were able to take in and watch the game, and certainly poke some fun at Alex Barth.
It's always fun to poke fun at Alex. I mean, we love him to death. It's like, poking fun at your brother or something like that.
That's exactly right.
But it's always...
Okay, the thing is, and for those out there not as familiar with Alex as either myself or Evan, Alex is a dyed-in-the-wool Patriots fan. He grew up a New Englander, and he is the classic new Patriot fan, and Alex readily admits this. That's what makes it so hilarious if a play doesn't go well, or if, God forbid, Josh McDaniels calls a reverse pass from Julian Edelman to Tom Brady, to watch Alex's reaction when things go bad. I'm sorry, but it's hilarious. And I have to, as you know I did at the table, I am telling him, look, dude, you have 5 Super Bowls. You've been to the Super Bowl 8 times in your lifetime. Chill a little bit, okay?
Well, that's why he has such high standards, though, right? Like, we don't settle for anything less. But no, I think he punched a chair, actually, when they threw that pass to
he did.
to Brady. And we love him, but he definitely he can definitely lose his mind with the best of them when things aren't going well.
So, that is a perfect segue, because a lot of Patriots fans were punching their hands on chairs and I'm sure other pieces of furniture with the performance of the Patriots, but specifically Tom Brady on Sunday. There's been a lot of breakdown, including by yourself on clnsmedia.com, of how Tom Brady performed on Sunday. And I thought you were as level-headed as anybody when you said, look, Brady was not and has not been at his MVP level this year. I think anybody who's watched him game in and week out knows that. But also you have to take a look at what's been around Tom Brady this year, and certainly there's an explanation for some of his drop-off in production, right?
Sure, yeah. I think that, Tom keeps telling us this every time we talk to him, that he kind of feels like it's been a revolving door at a lot of positions on offense, and they haven't really had their guys, 11 or 12 guys that they're kind of going to rely on in January and hopefully into February to, kind of ride or die with on the field at the same time in a lot of these games. It's Julian Edelman's missed the first 4 weeks. Rob Gronkowski's in and out of the lineup. Sony Michel is in and out of the lineup. Josh Gordon comes in mid-season. His tackles are in and out of the lineup. His starting right guard is, there and then not there. So a lot of, that's just kind of football season, right? The war of attrition. So a lot of this isn't new for Tom Brady. But I think that he's just saying, we're not our finished product yet. And right now, they're just kind of trying to grind through this part of the schedule. And it's kind of a grind for everybody, this time of year, players, coaches, media. We're all kind of just trying to get through the rest of the regular season in one piece. And that's kind of, I think, where this Patriots offense is right now. And then they're just kind of hoping that all the pieces come back together and can kind of mesh in time to, go on a playoff run.
Do you think, after watching the film, Tom was forcing it to Josh Gordon too much? And on Sunday, and if you do you think that the reason for that is They are trying to force feed him to get him to the point where he is game ready and the number one option, certainly if Gronk isn't available, closer to the playoffs.
I definitely think they are forcing it to Gordon on occasion, yes. I think that coming into the game, for whatever reason, whatever they saw on film or what they saw in the past with Adoree Jackson, they really liked Josh Gordon versus Adoree Jackson. They thought that was a matchup that favored the Patriots heavily. I'm talking about the coaching staff. I'm talking about Tom Brady, everybody from the top on down. And every single time the Titans were in cover one coverage with a safety in the middle of the field and Josh Gordon had a one-on-one matchup on the outside, Brady was going with, a jump ball, back shoulder, something along those lines to the sideline to Gordon against Jackson one-on-one every single time. It was clear that it was something that they liked about that matchup because it was so predetermined. It was determined pre-snap. In some instances, even just immediately, Brady would take the snap, look over to Josh Gordon, throw a jump ball, and say, go make a play. And that was kind of just, a lot of targets that went incomplete. That was what they were. They were back shoulders and they were jump balls. And a few of those I put on Josh Gordon to, not necessarily all on him, but to win a contested catch battle that at least once that we've kind of accustomed to seeing him win his entire NFL career, but certainly since he came here last week against Green Bay, he won a couple of those. One, obviously didn't count, but the other one did. And I think that they were kind of hoping that he was going to win some of those situations. Now, in terms of forcing him for the long term, I tend to back off of those types of things a little bit because I always hear Bill Belichick tell us that they call every game and they play every game to win that game. But at the same time, I'm not naive. So I do think that some of it is, there's no rep like a game rep. And in order to get Josh Gordon, up to speed with Tom Brady and within this offense, that's, kind of what they have to do is target him a lot. But in a game without Gronkowski, I mean, he is the best option other than Julian Edelman. So he was going to see 10 to 12 targets seems about fair. It just was kind of the way that they were targeting him and how they were just kind of expecting him to jump over Adoree Jackson, who's a very good athlete, and just continue to do that.
I don't understand why when Malcolm Butler was on Chris Hogan, Tom Brady didn't look that way more.
Yeah, so basically the Titans demoted Malcolm Butler to their third cornerback. He was their nickel corner, their third corner, whatever you want to call it. And Adoree Jackson and Logan Ryan were the top two guys. And when the Titans were in base defense, which wasn't very often, obviously, it was only those two guys, Adoree and Logan Ryan, on the field. But when Malcolm came on the field, what did they do? They did kind of what I expected them to do, and that was they hit him on the Patriots' worst receiver, who right now is Chris Hogan. So they put him on Chris Hogan, and they kind of relied on him to, cover up Chris Hogan, and he did, for the most part, do his job pretty well. There was that double move, obviously, at the end of the game that Tom Brady, Jim Gray asked Tom Brady about, and Brady said, I missed him on that one. I should have gotten it to him instead of Julian Edelman. But
that was overall, on the fourth down over the middle, right?
Yeah.
Where he threw into three triple coverage.
Yeah, he threw into tight coverage instead of there was a couple of better options, I thought, on that play. And, we can talk about soon here. But I think that overall with Chris Hogan, he just wasn't winning a whole lot of routes against Malcolm Butler. And, maybe there was one or two times that you can point to on tape. But overall, I think that with Brady and Hogan right now, there's a trust issue, first of all. And second of all, I think that there's just a separation issue for Chris Hogan where he's just not winning a lot of routes. So it's going to be tough for Brady to continually look for him, on a first read or something like that if he's just not winning consistently.
All right. I'm going to ask you to give me some of your top reasons, not really to be overly concerned about the future of the Hall of Fame quarterback, and reasons you may feel that maybe the cliff isn't approaching, but there's a pretty big downward slope coming up for Brady. Give me both sides here.
Well, I think for those that, want to look for cliffs, I think his handling of pressure this season is kind of indicative to what you normally see from a quarterback when his play starts to decline, or you see from a quarterback that just isn't very good. The guys that aren't usually in the conversation with Tom Brady, the Ryan Tannehills of the world, or the rookies quarterbacks around the league. When you don't handle pressure well, that's usually a trait that you're not playing very well, and that's what's happening with Brady right now. And, I'm kind of going back to the last 3 games, taking the bye week without having to look ahead to another team or recap a Patriots game this weekend to kind of see what's going on with Tom Brady over these last 3 games. And the first thing that, stands out to me is that his handling of pressure and his comfortability in the pocket when things are kind of chaotic around him is nowhere near what it was last year. Last year, he was dynamite against pressure, best in the league, highest passer rating in the league under pressure, and he would just stand in there and he would just throw darts, stepping into throws, unaffected at all. The guys, hitting him, draped all over him. None of it mattered. It was all just kind of a zero focus in on where he was throwing the football, and he was able to get the ball out and make plays under pressure better than any quarterback in the league. So you see that happening to him this year a little bit, where the pressure is kind of getting to him. His lower body mechanics is something that I think a lot of people that watch the tape like I do that start to pick up on some of the things that are going on with Tom Brady are going to notice. The few things that I have noticed are kind of things that we talk about normally with quarterbacks that, when we're talking about the draft process, guys, are coming into the draft and you're trying to pick out their flaws and stuff like that as a prospect. Normally we start talking about lower body mechanics and, how their footwork is and stuff like that. And Brady's usually just been fantastic in that regard, one of the best in the league with his footwork. But right now, I see him throwing from some narrow bases, especially under pressure when the pocket's collapsing, not necessarily a free runner, but when the pocket's collapsing around him, he's not stepping into the throws and he's shrinking his base, which always, for any quarterback, is going to affect your accuracy down the field, and you throw from a small base. A guy, not to compare Lamar Jackson to Tom Brady, but Lamar Jackson is a guy that basically got roasted all of the draft process last year for throwing with a narrow base. So that's, kind of where all this kind of stems from. And the other thing that I'm seeing from him with his lower body mechanics is his hip is tending to open up a little bit more than you would like to see, a little bit earlier than you would like to see in his foot. And this is something that you kind of see from Brady when he gets under pressure in the offense. He doesn't trust the offensive line in front of him. His front foot is going to point more towards the sideline than he wants it to, and those hips are going to torque open faster. And when that happens, you get throws like the one that we had to James White on Sunday, where it just looks like an ephus and it looks, really like a knuckleball coming out of his hand. All of that starts from the waist down. So I think a lot of that, it has to do with it as well, and the pressure aspect of it too. This, I don't think, was necessarily a big picture issue coming into Tennessee, but it was certainly something to take away out of Tennessee, was that he sometimes has a tendency for a lot of his career, but this year I feel like more in particular, and I wonder if it's something that he's kind of subconsciously doing to kind of keep himself healthy, and that is that he's bailing on a lot of plays a lot earlier than we are used to him seeing. What I mean by that is he's either turtling in the pocket and going right down and just taking the sack when maybe he has an extra half a second to deliver a pass, or he's just throwing the ball into the third row and just, not getting to his check down, not getting to his second read. As soon as he sees that rusher coming off or feels a rusher coming off a block or sees it right in front of him, he's just chucking the ball into the stands. And he had 6 throwaways in that game against Tennessee, which is a lot for him, even though he's one of those guys that kind of tends to throw the ball away and live to see another day type thing. So I wonder at 41, is he kind of making the decision to say, okay, I'm not going to stand in the pocket and deliver some of these throws in November and October and even December, and I'm going to wait to save all those, bullets under pressure for when it matters the most in January and February, and if I get hurt then, so be it. So I wonder if some of that has to do with it, because last year, if you remember, Trags, he played a lot of the season hurt.
He did.
He played with that Achilles in his ankle or whatever ankle injury that was, and he played with the AC sprain in his non-throwing shoulder. because I think he was trying to, stand in the pocket a little bit longer and take some of that punishment. So I think that's all those things, lower body mechanics, handling of pressure. I'm going to write about, with Brady and what I've been seeing with him, and I know a couple of other people that, I trust their eyes too that are saying the same thing.
Speaking with our own CLNS Patriots beat writer and film aficionado, Evan Lazar. Hey, everybody, I want to tell you about the future of journalism. If you haven't seen it by now, here's your chance to join a sports revolution. It's called The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase, and sign up now for 40% off. That's theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase, for your first subscription to The Athletic for less than $3 a month. I was just reading Jeff Howe's terrific breakdown of what went wrong in Nashville and the 5 problem areas that might need addressing in the final 6 regular season games. Hint, it's not all Tom Brady. Then there's Matt Chatham's great weekly insight to the X's and O's. His breakdown going into the Tennessee game was a absolute must-read. He really hit the nail on the head on Marcus Mariota. The Athletic is a subscription-based publisher of smarter sports coverage for die-hard fans. The model is simple: no ads, no pop-ups, and no autoplay videos. Instead, readers subscribe for authentic, in-depth coverage written by journalists who know their teams inside and out. Go to theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase. Again, that's theathletic.com/PatsBeat for 40% off now. Subscribe and be part of the future of sports journalism. Speaking with Evan Lazar. All right, we've spent enough time, I think, on Tom Brady. Let's get on to the defensive line and an area that I think, for the most part, has been a strength of this team. And on Sunday, it was a rare case of they just kind of got beat up at the line of scrimmage and got manhandled. I want to get your sense of how important that defensive front's going to be the rest of the year, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really, from what I've seen of this defense, when that defensive line plays well, and it's similar on the offensive side of the ball, it really starts on the line of scrimmage. I know we want to talk about Tom Brady, we want to talk about Josh Gordon, and some of the flashier players, but really for this team defensively, when they've been able to stop the run, they've been able to be successful for the most part on that side of the ball. Now, obviously, you can kind of take the Kansas City game, for example, and say, well, that's not true in that game, but that, is kind of an anomaly against amazing offense. I'm just talking about against some of these offenses that aren't as good as Kansas City's, like a Tennessee's. When you don't stop the run, and Belichick, told me himself, when you don't stop the run, you don't get into any obvious passing situation. When you don't get into obvious passing situations, you can't rush the passer with the same kind of ferocity that they did against, Green Bay, for example, where they knew that Green Bay wasn't going to run the ball a whole lot, and they were able to really pin their ears back and get after Rodgers. So everything, to me, it starts with stopping the run up front with the defensive line and then goes from there, because then they can take and turn teams one-dimensional, and that is when they can kind of unleash some of the pass rush scheme that they do the stunts and games and some of the blitzes that they do incorporate that have been successful this year at different times. That stuff doesn't happen, and you can't really make that play call unless you know it's going to be passed, and that really starts with, early down defense.
What about the addition of Duke Dawson to the defense and what that means for the secondary? Because, on Twitter, and I thought a couple of people made a good point, they'd like to see more speed in the front seven. With the obvious reference there for linebackers that can cover a running back out of the backfield on a wheel route. But what do you think, what do you make of the addition of Duke Dawson being activated, the rookie out of Florida being activated off IR?
Yeah, Duke is the guy that in the pre-draft process I wasn't a huge fan of, but then once they made the pick and I kind of digested it and went back and revisited some of his film, I kind of understood where they were going with the pick, and I think that what he gives them is a true slot cornerback, a guy that can probably play a little bit in the box safety star role that Patrick Chung plays in as well if they wanted to go that route with him. but he's a true cover corner. He's a guy that was really good in college at covering the shiftier slot guys. I think that he could also be a matchup guy against running backs potentially too. I don't know if he necessarily has the size to go up against tight ends, but maybe if they want to incorporate him in that role as well. But I think that mainly what it does is it pushes Jonathan Jones and Patrick Chung as the guys that are really, Chung has really been a slot corner more or less over the last couple of years for the Patriots, and it pushes those two guys, I think, a little bit because I think Duke has a lot of really good abilities inside there between the numbers, and I think that that's kind of where this is headed. I thought that the Duke Dawson pick was maybe a commentary on how they thought of Jonathan Jones's ceiling and also the kind of longevity here. We're getting into the final years probably of Patrick Chung's career, at least with the Patriots, because he's now a veteran player. So maybe turning that position over as well and kind of getting a guy that is more known for his coverage skills in that spot with the way that the league is going instead of a Patrick Chung who's more of a safety type that is obviously an extremely productive player and a guy I've always been on the table for, but hasn't necessarily had his best year either.
No, and I think I think you hit it on the head. I think this is more about Patrick Chung of late getting kind of exposed in coverage. He's terrific on a tight end. He's physical enough to keep up in the face of a tight end. But in terms of, second and third receivers in the slot, he doesn't have the foot speed, I don't think, to keep up with some of the more dangerous slot receivers that you're going to find in Pittsburgh and Kansas City, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a lot of where this position was headed. Last year, the Patriots, I think, were second to last in yards allowed to slot receivers. They were just really bad at it. So when you look at, what they wanted to address in the draft, right now the slot position is, basically a starter, right? It's the nickel corner, the third corner is a starter position in the league right now.
Base is really nickel now.
Right, base is, it's kind of flip-flopped where teams are in nickel with, 5 or 6 defensive backs, even sometimes in dime, like 60 to 65% of the time because of how much 11 personnel teams are running on the offensive side of the ball. So that's a very predominant position right now. And you have to also remember that when you take, when you put a corner on the field, you're taking a linebacker off the field, which means that slot corner is now essentially your strong side linebacker. So there's a lot of responsibilities in the run game for that position as well. So that's why a guy like Patrick Chung has worked out so well in that spot for the Patriots because he's a solid tackler and a very good run defender and a physical guy. So I think that they're looking at this as they needed to improve coverage-wise in that slot position from last year to this year. So they went out and they drafted a slot cornerback in the second round. Okay,
are we going to see any more 58-yard kickoff returns against the Patriots special teams?
It's a head scratcher, honestly, because you watch the film of that 58-yarder and two of the guys that you really count on the most, really three of the guys, because I kind of put Devin McCourty, sort of to blame, although it wasn't his fault necessarily at the point of attack, but him, Nate Ebner, and Jonathan Jones, or three of the four guys that I would say were mostly to blame for that big return on the backside there that both Ebner and Jonathan Jones ended up past the ball, running too far upfield, which is never what you want to do in that situation. And McCourty, I thought, got a good angle on him to get him out of bounds to prevent the touchdown, but he kind of got sucked in towards the sideline a little bit too much too, and there was just no press. There was nobody on that backside to prevent that, little cutback by Jennings. So I think what was so surprising and what has been so surprising to me is it's not the guys that, are only on kickoff coverage from time to time that are screwing up. It's some of the guys that are out there all the time that are having trouble. And I wrote about it a few weeks ago and asked around about the new rule changes, and they did say that the rule changes are playing a factor in all of this, but it's at the point now where, that can't be an excuse anymore. You've repped it for 10 straight weeks, and if you include the preseason, another 4 games in all of training camp. So at this point in time, the rules are what they are, and you should have adjusted to those things. So really playing with good leverage and tackling is really the only two things that you can really point to improve in that area. And I think a lot of people want to say, well, boom the ball out of the back of the end zone and take, the touchback at the 25, but only 65% of kickoffs end in touchbacks league-wide. It's not like you can do that every single time. Sometimes the ball doesn't travel that far. Sometimes there's a gust of wind. Sometimes, as we know in New England, it's snowing and you can't kick the ball that far in December and January, which is obviously where a lot of the crucial games are going to happen.
What about the status on Rob Gronkowski? What do you think's the best case scenario going forward, Evan?
I would say the best case scenario is that Gronk is out there for the next 6 games after the bye week, basically in the role that he played in Buffalo, which was a blocker and a decoy. And then when they really needed it in the fourth quarter, they threw that back shoulder down the sideline in the fringe red zone to him, isolated outside the numbers, and they were able to pick up a big play with him that way. He did catch some balls off of play action over the middle, with some space with the displacing guys and stuff like that. But I think that I've said it to you, off the air, that I just don't think that we're going to see Rob Gronkowski at 100% the rest of the year. I think that he has dealt with some serious ankle and back injuries, back spasms, and I think that ankle injury was probably a high ankle sprain, which is usually bad news for anybody, but especially for a bigger guy like him, is going to be something that's the way that he can cut and how explosive he's going to be in his lower half. So I think that all of those things kind of point to maybe we see Gronk at like 80 or 85% in the playoffs if they can kind of see him until then. But I don't think that you're going to see Gronk when he does come back. I could be wrong, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of seam routes over the middle or, in positions where they're going to open up to a lot of contact. I think that at this point, he's not going to hit those incentives. That ship has sailed. So let's, get him healthy for the playoffs and get him right.
Do you think there's any resentment knowing that he's not going to get those, knowing right now that ship has sailed, like you said, he's not going to get his incentives, and or is he bought on or bought into the Patriot way so much that he knows the way of the world and the lay of the land in Foxborough? He knows what is going to happen next. He's only got a year or more too, maybe, in Foxborough before they wave bye-bye. Do you think he's reading the writing on the wall?
I think that he's disappointed in two things. I think, personally, when you're a player that's an all-pro player like Rob Gronkowski was throughout his career, when you don't play at that high of a level, when you just can't physically get to that level, it's demoralizing. I mean, it has to be demoralizing. You kind of can see, he mentioned it, he watches himself on tape and he's kind of just disgusted over like how slow he's moving and how he's laboring up and down the field. It's just not the guy that, he wants to be. So that, I think, has a lot to do with why his personality and his persona and his public perception has kind of gone down and his attitude has kind of suffered, is because he's just not playing well. And when you're not playing well, it just doesn't feel good. But I think with the incentives is he's kind of has to be saying to himself, this is why I wanted the guarantees. Like I knew that it was probably going to be a long shot for me to get through 16 games in a regular season. And I told you guys that, and you made me kind of sing for my supper anyways. And that was, the way that whole thing went. And, Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, alluded to this, that, Gronk is probably going to retire at the end of the season unless he some guarantees from the Patriots on his next deal, and I just don't see that happening. And, I'm not saying that Bill Belichick was necessarily right, but Bill Belichick did want to move on from Rob Gronkowski in the offseason, and now we've kind of had, this injury bug with Gronk, and he's in and out of the lineup, and he's not as effective as usual. And, maybe Bill was kind of doing that, get rid of him a year or two early instead of a year or two late. And it's kind of put them in a situation now where they really don't have a choice but to sit Gronk until he's healthy and until he's 100%.
Well, if memory serves me, they won Super Bowl 51 without him.
Right. Yeah, they did. And, it took a 25-point comeback.
Sure did.
So I don't think that that's something that is necessarily sustainable. And I think that certainly with this team and the way that Brady is currently playing, he would have to elevate his game back to that 2016, 2017 level for them to win the Super Bowl without Gronk. If everybody plays the way that they're playing right now, even against how they played against Green Bay, I don't know if this team wins the Super Bowl without Gronk this time around.
So, which brings me to my final point. Right now, at the bye week, they are not the 1 seed. They are not even the 2 seed. Are they going to be able to leapfrog Pittsburgh, and are they going to beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on December 16th to get the job done?
Well, that's kind of like last year. That's kind of the game, right? That's the game that if the Patriots lose at home here to Minnesota, but they run the table everywhere else and they finish the season 12-4 with that head-to-head against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, I think they put themselves in a pretty good position to get a bye. I don't know about the number 1 seed, but certainly a bye. And I think that, ultimately what it comes down to me is that these next 4 games, if 4 of their last 6 games are obviously against AFC East, they have to be 4-0 in those games. They can't have any slip-ups in Miami like they did last year, or lose a game to the Bills or the Jets where they have no business losing those either. Both of those Jets games, or to the Bills here at Gillette Stadium. They can't lose to anybody in the AFC East. They just don't have that margin of error right now. So they need to finish the season 6-0 against the division. Those teams are inferior in every single way to the Patriots this year. And then, we'll see what happens in Pittsburgh. But I think that they have a pretty good chance of landing a top 2 seed. When you look at the schedules, them and Pittsburgh, it's really just that tie right now that's getting in the way of them not, being ahead of Pittsburgh. And they have that head-to-head game. They've owned the Steelers in the past. I think that they probably win that game in a close one unless the wheels really come off here. And then the Chiefs' schedule is not anything easy either. So if they can get to that 12-4, 13-3 even, if they can pull off the win against Minnesota, then you're looking at, maybe that head-to-head coming back to, factor in with the Chiefs as well. So really that Pittsburgh game, a lot like last year, is, basically the game that everyone should have circled right now, and is going to be kind of the deciding factor, I would assume, as to whether they get a bye or they don't get a bye.
Yeah, I get worried and concerned about a game in Miami. I just do. I think Miami's good enough and fast enough, and Adam Gase will probably certainly have a point to prove after what happened in that abhorrent effort, that absolute rollover, mail-it-in effort at Gillette when the Patriots smoked them back in early or late September 29th. I think he's going to have them pretty geared up for that contest.
Yeah, I mean, that's the game, right? I mean, Brady in Miami, Brady in Florida really has not had great luck, and certainly Brady in Miami is like kind of the one place in the division where he struggles. So that's the game. If they can win that game, they should be able to go 4-0 in these last 6 games against the division, and 6-0 overall against the AFC East, which, I mean, that's really what they should be. The rest of this division is kind of a dumpster fire. I mean, it's even worse this year, I would say, than in years past. I know a lot of people like to crap on the AFC East and say, how easy of a road the Patriots have every year. But this year in particular, I think that it's been even worse. I mean, certainly the Bills, they did play the Patriots a little bit tough in that Monday night game, but that team is a disaster. The Jets, obviously had some moments with Sam Darnold this year, but it's really been kind of cold since. Darnold he's injured, but it kind of sounds like they might bench him for mental, purposes to kind of give him a break and put Josh McCown in there for a few games. So it might actually be Josh McCown against the Patriots after the bye.
That's the one and only Evan Lazar. I want to thank everyone for downloading today's podcast. I want to thank our great guest, Evan Lazar, covering the Patriots and co-host of the All 22 pod on CLNS Media with Adam Kirkshin. Correct, Evan?
That is correct, yes. I'm working on something on Brady now to kind of explain, separate from what's going on with the offensive line and the receivers, just, honing in on Brady himself. What are some of the things I see him struggling with? And old friend Tom House, his QB doctor, QB coach, might want to make a trip up to Foxborough, I think.
Wow, now that's a tease. Again, follow him on Twitter at Ezlazar. That's Evan Lazar. I want to, of course, thank our great sponsor, The Athletic, for producer Michael Angi, our executive producer Larry H. Russell, and the founder of the network, Nick Gelso. This is Mike Petralia, and this has been the Patriots Beat podcast, powered by CLNS Media.